The path to the throne for Louis-Philippe I was forged during the Three Glorious Days, Les Trois Glorieuses of July 1830. This violent but swift uprising was a direct reaction to the reactionary July ordinances issued by King Charles X, which sought to dissolve the Chamber of Deputies, restrict the press, and reduce the electorate. As barricades rose across Paris and the senior Bourbon line collapsed under the weight of its own absolutist ambitions, the nation faced a dangerous political vacuum. To prevent the chaos of a radical republic or a return to Napoleonic rule, the liberal bourgeoisie and political moderates turned to Louis-Philippe, Duke of Orléans. By presenting himself as a man of the people who respected the legacy of 1789, Louis-Philippe was ushered onto the throne as a stabilizing force, effectively ending the Bourbon Restoration and beginning a new chapter of constitutional monarchy. Louis-Philippe I is a singular figure in French history, defined by titles that signaled a profound shift in the nature of sovereignty. Unlike his predecessors, he was never styled as the King of France and Navarre, a title rooted in absolutist tradition. Instead, he reigned as the King of the French. This semantic distinction was revolutionary. It implied that his authority was derived from the will of the people rather than divine right. Known as Le Roi Citoyen, the Citizen King, and the Bourgeois Monarch, he represented the House of Orléans, a cadet branch of the Bourbon dynasty. His 18-year reign, the July Monarchy 1830 to 1848, served as a transitional period attempting to reconcile France's ancient monarchical heritage with the explosive democratic forces of the French Revolution. Before his rise to power, Louis-Philippe led a life marked by radical shifts in fortune. During the early French Revolution, he was sympathetic to the liberal revolutionary cause and served as a soldier in the Revolutionary Army, fighting at Valmy and Jemappes. However, as the terror intensified, he was forced into a long, arduous exile that lasted over 2 decades, a flight necessitated by the shifting political winds that eventually claimed his father's life. His father, known as Philippe Égalité, had famously voted for the execution of Louis XVI, yet was himself sent to the guillotine in 1793 during the Reign of Terror. Louis-Philippe traveled extensively through Europe and even spent several years in the United States, living in Philadelphia and exploring the American frontier. This period of wandering and varied experiences at times, living in near poverty and working as a teacher, deeply influenced his pragmatic middle-class sensibilities, distinguishing him from the sheltered traditionalist Bourbon monarchs who preceded him, following the collapse of the Bourbon line in the streets of Paris. This unique blend of royal lineage and lived common experience made him the ideal candidate for a nation seeking stability without a return to absolutism. His legitimacy was famously sealed at the Hôtel de Ville, when the aging Marquis de Lafayette, the respected French general and hero of the American War of Independence, publicly embraced him while draped in the tricolor, presenting the new monarch as the best of republics. Louis-Philippe emerged as the compromise candidate. He possessed royal blood but also genuine revolutionary credentials. To solidify this image, he adopted the tricolor flag, blue, white, and red, rejecting the white flag of the Bourbon Restoration, and took an oath to the Charter of 1830, explicitly agreeing to rule by the will of the people. Once on the throne, the king pursued a policy he called the juste milieu, or the golden mean. This was a deliberate attempt to steer a middle course between Republican radicalism and ultra-royalist absolutism. In practice, the golden mean favored the haute bourgeoisie, bankers, industrialists, and wealthy landowners. This era is famously captured by the directive attributed to Prime Minister François Guizot: Enrichissez-vous, get rich. However, this focus came at a high political cost. Census suffrage meant that voting rights were strictly tied to tax payments, restricting the electorate to roughly 1% of the population. Furthermore, the working and lower middle classes who were instrumental in the 1830 revolution were entirely disenfranchised. Despite political stagnation, France saw immense material growth under Louis-Philippe. This included the start of the Industrial Revolution in France, a massive railway boom and economic expansion, and the completion of the Arc de Triomphe and the erection of the obelisk of Luxor in the Place de la Concorde. The citizen king prioritized peace in Europe to protect the commercial interests of his base. He sought rapprochement with Great Britain and maintained a policy of neutrality during European uprisings. However, he made a major exception in North Africa with the conquest of Algeria. Initiated in 1830, the aggressive colonization of Algeria became a central project, laying the groundwork for France's second colonial empire and providing a training ground for the military. The middle way ultimately alienated almost every political faction. First, there were the legitimists who viewed him as a usurper who stole the throne from the senior Bourbon line. Second, the Bonapartists yearned for the military glory of Napoleon. Third, the Republicans and Socialists were furious over the lack of universal suffrage and the misery of the urban poor. The king's unpopularity manifested in 7 assassination attempts, most notably the Infernal Machine plot of 1835. The end of the July Monarchy was precipitated by the Banquet Campaign. To bypass laws banning political meetings, the opposition began holding large public banquets to demand reform. When the government banned a major banquet in February 1848, Paris erupted in riots. The National Guard, formerly his base of support, refused to defend him. On February 24, 1848, Louis-Philippe abdicated in favor of his grandson, but the momentum was unstoppable. The Second Republic was declared. Louis-Philippe fled to England under the pseudonym Mr. Smith, living at Claremont House until his death in 1850. His reign is remembered as a period of significant modernization and industrialization that ultimately failed because it prioritized the prosperity of the few over the political inclusion of the many.